Hi everyone, I'm Kero O'Shea, the coordinator of The Voice and host for this evening's webinar. A special welcome to tonight's presenter, Greg Mossop from the Rotary Club of Boronia. How are you, Greg?
Fantastic. Thank you for the opportunity.
No worries. Been looking forward to this. And a big thank you to Shia Smart, the Assistant Rotary Coordinator for Greg's part of the world, who brought his marvellous process to attention and has led to this webinar. So thank you, Shia. I want at this stage to acknowledge the Wadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, who are the traditional custodians of the land on which I'm hosting tonight's webinar. I acknowledge the strength of their continuing culture and offer my respects to elders past, present and emerging, and congratulate the nation on the work that's being done in terms of reconciliation in Western Australia at the moment. Some wonderful things happening there and some good initiatives from Noongar folk. At this stage, I'm really pleased to introduce Greg Mossop from Rotary Boronia to tell us how to consistently recruit new members for your club. Over to you, please, Greg.
Thanks, Kero, and again, thank you for the opportunity. This is quite an exciting evening for me. I must admit I've never presented to such a diverse audience, and I'm really looking forward to it. And given that only about 5 minutes ago, I managed to get this Zoom connection to work properly, and I notice Alma's in the audience. So Alma is used to my IT incompetence, but we finally got it going. So let's hope you enjoy the presentation. The membership committee of our district, which is 9810, has developed a 5-point plan for clubs to increase member numbers and offer a full support to clubs undertaking the entire program. This presentation that I'm doing tonight is about point 3 of the 5-point plan. The first 2 points should be completed before moving on to what we're about to discuss, as they set up your club to be ready to accommodate the new members. It's important that new members are retained in the club and that this does not simply lead to a faster version of the proverbial membership merry-go-round, where new members are recruited then drop off again in a very short time. I can almost guarantee you that if you implement the plan that I'm about to present, that you'll probably get 4 or 5 new members in the next 4 months. But if you don't have your club ready to take these members in, if you don't have your club set up previously, then I'll also can possibly guarantee you that another 3 months after, you'll lose at least 3 of them. So it's a systematic approach that we take. Before we start, a little background. I started this process just over 2 years ago. There were some concerns in our club at what I was proposing, and undoubtedly you will probably get the same sort of responses. But once the results started to flow, it was full steam ahead. I made the first phone call on the 1st of October 2020. By the 30th of June that year, we had increased our membership by 3. Not a bad start. Since the 1st of July this year, we have inducted 9 new members, and as we speak, there are 5 more waiting and likely to be inducted in the next two months. We also have 25 potential members on what we call the futures list. So they're basically saying to us, I'm interested, but not quite now. Come back to me in X number of months' time. So it does work. So let's get started. There are 5 steps in this recruiting program as part of point 3 of the district's 5-point plan. The first one is to prepare your correspondence, make a list of potential candidates, contact the potential candidates and invite them to the club, keep great records and make potential members welcome. So step number 1 is to simply prepare your correspondence. We've designed a lead letter, and I can't take credit for that. I put something together, and my president pulled it apart and put it back together. But it is a good letter that I'm more than happy to share with you. It is a letter, so we use good old-fashioned snail mail. It is the most appropriate for this activity. Don't be tempted to use email instead. Over the 24 months, I've done it 7 times and got absolutely no results. Okay, so the first thing you do is you start, you make a list of potential candidates. And within my club, we have a bulletin, which most people do, I assume. And on the last page of the bulletin, there's a list of companies, individuals who have contributed to the club over the years. And a lot of it comes from our golf day. And I looked at that and thought, well, that's not a bad start as a list of people. And that has been in our bulletin, I would guess, for 15 years. I rang them all. Not one of them had ever been asked to join our club. Out of that little exercise, I think there was, I'll say 15. Out of that exercise, we got one corporate member and one normal member, if there's such a terminology. So your clubs will be something similar. You will have people that you can contact that are just sitting there waiting for it. So the obvious things you do, ask your members to recommend people that they know in the local community, business, friends, neighbours, relatives, etc. Check your club's alumni list. Consider including previous members who may want to rejoin, Facebook followers, other groups, people involved in the organisation of your club and where your club has supported them in the past. Add all these people to a list and contact them. This is the type of process that we should be doing anyway. The process I'm about to present isn't instead of these activities, it's in addition to them. Consider it to be the foundation of your recruitment process, if you like, and the rest is the cream on the top of the cake. You will find that once you start it and existing members learn what successes you are getting, it becomes infectious, almost competitive, particularly in our club. Never be afraid to tell people what your stats are saying, and I'm more on statistics later on. You will find that other members get involved and source new members and become more enthusiastic about the process overall. I mentioned earlier that we'd had an increase of we've inducted 9 people since the 1st of July. This process has probably, 4 of those have come through this process. The other 5 has come from the additional actions of existing members. So people get involved, people get excited about the process. Okay, so this is how I do it. And I'm prepared to be told that it won't work. Trust me, it does. You can see my stats. A list of occupations is a good start. So good old yellow pages if you want to use it. But try this. Do a Google search and go to joboutlook.gov.au/A/Z. It's a list of occupations in Australia, primarily used by recruitment agencies, etc. There are over 1,600 occupations listed. Decide where you want to start. Not always at A. I think probably accountants get more marketing letters than anybody else, mainly because the alphabet starts at A. So think about doing it the other way. Come from Z and work backwards, or meet halfway. Pick occupations that are appropriate to your area. Now, there's not many dairy farmers or opal miners in our district, so be realistic about it. As an example, I've started at the letter H. I Googled riding instructors in Beaconsfield, which is a nearby suburb to us. I found a local business that supports a person with that job title. For example, I found Victorian Equestrian Centre at Upper Beaconsfield. You go and explore the website and you find the name of an appropriate person. For example, Sean Proctor is the farm manager at BEC. So now you have a name, a phone number, and a prospective member. Of course, it's not always that easy. Websites don't always include the name and of the business owner or manager. So if you, like my wife, she's mad on NCIS, do a bit of investigative work, become a detective and go hunting on the internet. Check Facebook and LinkedIn for the business name and see if there's a person's name can be found. Use Google to ask simply who owns ABC Proprietary Limited. Try a Australian business number search. That's usually pretty good. There is no guarantee of success, so don't spend too much time on it. If you don't get all the details you need, move on to the next one. Keep your list on a spreadsheet, and I'll come back to that in a minute, with space for appropriate notations as you work through the process. Continue this process until you get 10 prospects. Numbers will change depending upon how many new members you want, and we're looking at having 50 members by the end of June. So that probably will mean we might taper off a bit. So instead of sending 10 letters a week, I might send 5 or whatever happens to be. It's just a matter. But if you have the stats that are accurate, you can work that out relatively simply. Okay. Once you have the 10 prospects, send the information to your club's bulletin editor for publication in the next issue. Why do we do that? Pretty simple, actually. If I put up a name, Fred Nurk, and one of my members says, oh, for God's sake, don't bring Fred into the club, he's an absolute goose, then I simply don't send the letter out. Conversely, if someone comes to me and said, oh, look, I know Fred, he's a really good bloke and I think he'd be a real asset to the club. What I do, I put a PS on the bottom of the letter. And PSs are extremely powerful. Put a PS on the bottom. By the way, our member, Fred Jones, asked to be remembered to you. I've done that now 3 times, and every time the prospective member actually rings our president to say, look, I got your letter, I'm vaguely interested, as opposed to waiting for my phone call. So if you get the situation to put a PS on your letter, please do. Once there are no objections from existing members, send the prospects the invitation letter. It's a good idea to do a test. Send your president or another member a letter asking them to call you when they receive it. It's a timing test for Australia Post. Australia's Post's records aren't all that flash in some areas, and I assume it's different in different areas. So that'll give you an idea of when the letter is likely to arrive. Follow the letter up with a phone call timed to be about 2 days after the letter is likely to have arrived. The aim of the call is to invite the candidate to a club meeting as a guest. I'm not asking them to join at this stage. I'm just inviting them along to a meeting to see how the club works. Making these calls is the sticking point for many. Why is it difficult? Not everybody is cut out to be a cold caller. It's not necessarily an easy task to do, but the trick to it is having utmost faith in your statistics, and that's why the spreadsheet that I'll explain in a minute is vitally important. It's a good idea that you know what you're going to say. Just rehearse it a few times, but don't be a parrot. You've got to be human. You've got to be able to talk to people on a one-on-one human basis. Try a few role plays with committees first, with one of your committee members, and just say, I'm going to pretend I'm going to ring you and let's see how I go. And an old sales trick, smile before you make the phone call. Have a smile in your voice. Be prepared to be rejected. Don't take it personally. What's the worst that can happen? Since I started this program, I would have to have made 200 phone calls. The worst I've had someone say to me, "No, sorry, mate, not even vaguely interested," and hung up. Did that hurt immensely? Of course not. So people anticipate they're going to get, bashed around the ears, etc. It doesn't happen. At the end of the call, the aim is to have the candidate accept an invitation to visit the club and propose a date for them to do so. Be aware of the club's forthcoming programs so you can make the most appropriate meeting for your guests to attend. Probably not a real flash idea having 2 or 3 guests come along if you're having committee nights and everyone breaks away and goes into committees, etc. Try and have it when you've got a good guest speaker. Can't always happen, but try and make it a more appropriate meeting if you can. Once a date has been set for the club visit, follow it up with a pending letter. And that includes details of the club's Facebook page and various other contact details, etc. It's also a good idea if you can send them a copy of the club's latest bulletin. Again, giving them all the contact details with Facebook and the like. Important thing is to stay in touch. If the agreed meeting is soon, a phone call 2 or 3 days beforehand is a good idea to refresh their memory and ensure that they're still coming. If the meeting is sometime in the future or an uncertain time, follow it up 2 or 3 times at least before the meeting comes along. One of our club members made the suggestion, and it's not a bad one, it depends on where you are, etc., that you actually offer for someone to pick the guest up and bring them to the club. It can be quite daunting to walk into a venue that you've never been to before, to meet someone you've never met before, to be taken in to meet a group of 30-odd people that you've never met before. So it's sometimes not a bad idea if you get that vibe from them, that you can pick them up and bring them to the meeting. And you obviously, as you're driving from where you pick them up to the meeting, you can have a good discussion with them. Okay, now we come to probably the hardest question. Who is going to ring these people? As I said earlier, cold calling is not for everybody. Try to find someone who is comfortable about it. A marketing or sales background is very handy. It all comes back to believing 100% in your stats, which we'll talk about now. The success of this process relies on keeping good and quality and accurate statistics. If you decide to pick this up and run with it, set a goal, say 10 new members for the year, and then use the stats to monitor your progress. While making the list and setting the goals, be aware of the diversity of the club's membership. I've referred to accountants before tonight. I wonder whether there's any accountants in the room. I hope don't want to offend anybody. Hello, Glenda. I'll be careful what I say. You probably don't want 10 accountants in your club. It used to be that you were only allowed to have one, but so just be conscious when you're going through making your list, that you're conscious of, okay, we've already got 3 solicitors, so we probably don't need any more, so we'll move on. Right. Keeping good records will give you ongoing information, such as exactly where you are with each candidate, how many people you have contacted, how many candidate contacts for a positive outcome, which remember is to get someone to come along to the club as a guest. How many candidates do you have on your pending list? So that's the number of people who have said, yeah, I'm vaguely interested, I'll come along. How long between a positive outcome and a visit to the club? How many club visits eventually translate into a membership application? If you keep good records and really believe in them, you will know that after 2 or 3 negative responses, a positive must come along soon. Good stats are also the basis for your reports to your club. So you can tell people what you've been doing and how good the process is, and that, again, encourages them to get involved. I am happy, but by the way, to give you a copy of the spreadsheet. I'm happy to share my email address at the end of the session if you want it. I suggest if I do send it to you, save it. You can have a play with it, change it around, whatever, but you can always go back to mine and have a look at it. What the spreadsheet provides is information. E.g., you can monitor how many people you have to talk to get someone to be interested in finding out more about the club. This is the pending list, as we call it. My current stats, 2.4. So I need to talk to 2.4. I'm sorry about the decimal points, but they're important. I need to talk to 2.4 people before I get somebody who will say, yeah, I'll come along and look at the club. This makes phone calls a lot easier. The task is no longer a daunting one. If I talk to the 3 people and get nowhere, I become excited because I believe in the stats and I'm sure that the next one or the one after will be good. You can also monitor how many people you have on your pending list, important when scheduling visits to your club. Work out how many guests your club is able to accommodate at any one meeting. You don't want 10 guests at a meeting. You also know how many people you need to speak to before you get someone to visit the club. My stats, 7.1. So I talk to 7.1 people and I'll get a visitor to the club. Now, the thing about stats, you can do it over a short period and your stats won't be all that reliable or accurate. These stats are over 2 years. So they're starting to get very, very meaningful and accurate. And importantly, you'll know how many people you need to speak to before you get a membership application completed. My current figures, 17. Is making 17 phone calls to get a new member really all that daunting? I don't think it is. Getting new members, this is step 5. Getting new members to the club is only the beginning of the process. It's important to make new members welcome. I suggest you use, and we do it at Boronia, a tag team approach. That is to have 3 or 4 dedicated people, whether they're the membership committee or whatever, to keep talking to the potential new member. Simple idea, you start a conversation with them and I start the conversation and then talk about whatever, and Jim Blows walks past and says, hello Greg, how are you tonight? And by the way, Jim, this is one of our guests tonight, this is Mary. And he starts the conversation. I can then discreetly leave and move on. And then someone else will come over and take over from him. So the important thing is to make sure that your guest doesn't stand there like the proverbial, and that they're engaged. They're engaged in a conversation. It's worthwhile to have a club discussion about welcoming guests and having, as I said, a systematic approach as to what happens when someone new walks into the club. The number of times I've seen guests standing by themselves, looking around, wondering what the hell is going on. Cannot afford to have that happen. Be sure your visitors are never left alone and never left out of a conversation. And probably the biggest thing in this entire presentation is Remember that there are two main reasons people join Rotary: to give back to the community and to meet new people for friendship, network and fun. Make sure your club is ready to engage new members and involve them in Rotary. That, ladies and gentlemen, is my presentation. I am more than happy to accept questions.
Thank you, Greg. Glenda Bryson, you had a question about repeating something there, please.
Yeah, thanks for that, Caro. And Greg, thank you very much for your presentation. I did want to ask if you could repeat that Google search that you suggested, which was Job Outlook something, and I'm a quick typist, but I think the red wine got in the way.
It is joboutlook.gov.au/A-Z. If you just Google Job Outlook, you'll find it eventually.
I did do that, and I went, oh, I think I might have done something wrong. It's actually saying that is being decommissioned in mid-2022, so they send you off to another website soon.
Okay. I wasn't aware of that, but there'll be something very similar, Glenda. It's a website. I used to be in recruitment for a fair while. Probably too long, a lot of people would say, but it doesn't matter. And we used it all the time. So the government will come up with something similar.
The other comment I'd just like to make is that I've moved from Melbourne to regional Victoria, and I'm exploring the 5 different Rotary clubs in the region. And everything you have said tonight is actually being demonstrated by 2 of the clubs that I've been to. I'm about this week to go to the 3rd. And I just can't express how important it is to make the new person. I've been a Rotarian for 17 years, but I'm now new in this community. Make me feel welcome. I spent the weekend working with quite a few of them at the wine festival, which was very, very hard because you had to do taste testings as well. But gee, I felt, part of the family, and I haven't joined that club yet. So it is dreadfully important to make your new members, but even your existing members, you just lighten up. I think a lot of Rotary clubs, ones that I've come from, lighten up. They're too stale, they're too sour, grumpy old faces. They're doing themselves an injustice. So well done, thank you. I'll shush now.
I think that's great advice for Rotary clubs there, Glenda, because we lose a lot of Rotarians when people move from one location to another, and no one does that welcoming and ice-breaking and stuff. So good people go. Now, thank you for that question, and thank you, Greg, for the answer. My district governor, Patricia Schraven, has a question there. Over to you, please, DG Pat.
Yeah, hi everyone. This is great. Thank you so much, Greg. I'm really enjoying it. I did have a question. Do your club members, and I know you talked about getting the right people to actually liaise with potential new members, do you give them some sort of guidelines on what to talk about, or maybe perhaps what not to talk about?
We try to. Yeah, it comes back to a personal thing. We try to encourage it, and that's where, as I said, you need to have a tag team approach. And you have to have dedicated people who are prepared to start a conversation. A lot of people go to Rotary, and you're allowed to do it. You go to Rotary and you chat with your friends. You have a beer or a drink with them, and so forth. And that's your night. That's not the ideal member, but we can't dictate to people that you must go and do this. But if you can come up with a group of 4 or 5, 6 people to concentrate on looking after these new members, and it's the same with a guest speaker too. It's the number of times that I've seen a guest speaker come along to a club, and they come in, they stand against the back wall and look around, will someone come and talk to me? It's that's why you need a systematic approach to it.
Yeah, and I really appreciate that. I also liked that you did brief your members that this is a club thing that we're doing. Love that you put that list of names in the newsletter, or to share, so people could comment before you actually approach people. That was just excellent. And I think the reason that I asked is, look, in most cases, obviously when you go to a club, people are lovely and it is great. But certainly in my years, I've had two probably really outstanding moments. And probably when I first joined Rotary, I was assigned a buddy who very nicely caught up with me for coffee, but then spent probably, the whole time complaining about the club. So I thought that's not quite the welcome that I wanted. So it is really important to think about and obviously have everybody on board and assign the right people. So that was really good. Thank you.
I'm actually probably stepping out of place here, and remember talking about the 5-point plan that Alma and her board has put together. But step 4 talks about the mentoring process, and that's very, very important that you have somebody or a group of people, which is what we're trying to establish at Boronia, is a group of 5 or 6 people who act as a mentoring board. Just because you're given a mentoring, a mentor the night you're inducted, doesn't mean you necessarily like the person. Doesn't mean you can necessarily have an easy conversation with them. But if you have a panel of 4 or 5 people whose service is to make sure that this person fills in all the paperwork, does all the nitty gritty things that you should do when you first join, and a group of 4 or 5 people who can answer these questions, not just one person.
Great. Thanks, Greg, and thanks, Pat. A question there from Mike Walter. Over to you, please, Mike.
Thanks, Greg. My first question was, could you just briefly summarise line by line the 5 steps, please? The
5 steps of my process?
Yep.
Okay. The first one is prepare your correspondence. So make sure you got that letter right. I could possibly send you a copy of it, but you'd have to change it, obviously, because you don't want my president's name on there. You make the list of potential candidates. So go through that process that I spoke about the job outlook thing.
Yep.
Contact the candidates and invite them to the club. Keep your excellent statistics and Excel spreadsheet. And number 5 is make potential members welcome.
Fantastic. Thanks, Greg. The next question is from
very good
past Governor Elaine Mead. Over to you, please, Elaine.
Thanks, Kiro. Greg, I noticed when you were talking about the initial invite call, you were talking to people about inviting them to a meeting. Do you ever use the option to invite them to a project? Because I'm just thinking some people may be meeting hesitant. They kind of go, oh, God, don't really want to go to a meeting.
To answer your question, no, I haven't, but it's certainly got merit. When I'm talking to them, the question is quite often raised, so what does Rotary do? And I usually explain that Rotary is an extremely large organisation. We have international projects, etc., polio and malaria and the likes. But more importantly, we have local community projects. And I've got a list that I have on my idiot sheet when I'm talking to people. So we have projects such as A, B, C, D, etc. So I sort of do what you're saying, Elaine, but probably not exactly invite them to be directly involved. It's a good point, though.
Thanks.
Now, our next question is from past Governor Pushpaliam. Over to you, please, Pushpa.
Yep, I'm back. Thanks, Kiro, and thanks, Greg, for a great presentation. My question is, do you discuss with potential members about the cost of being a member and the time frame that they are required to devote to Rotary activities. Is that part of your discussion when you invite a new member? Thank you.
Quite often it is, but it's not something instigated by me. If they ask the question, I'll tell them what the fee structure is. It's something that I think is better to be discussed face to face as opposed to over a telephone. The actual timing of how often do I have to come to meetings is usually asked, because there is a perception that that you have to attend 100%, and so I usually answer that one. But the actual fees, I leave until a more appropriate time.
Super. Thank you, Pushpa. Thank you, Greg. Our next question is from Warwick Smith. Over to you, please, Warwick.
Hi, Caro. We've got the team here at the moment. We can attest that the Google Maps process works. We put together a list of about 650 a few years ago based on classifications. It took about a fortnight of hard work, but it's worth it. The question we've got is, how do you get the sales pitch right in your letter? I think that first entry is really crucial.
You are right, Warwick. It's the letter is vitally important, and it is a very well worded letter. As I said, I can't take full credit for it. I wrote it, and our president ripped it apart and put it back together again, which is what I asked him to do. Interestingly enough, though, Australia Post is not all that guaranteed to deliver things when they should and on time. And a lot of my people actually haven't received the actual letter. Either haven't received it by the time I ring them, or never receive them at all, and I still get the same results. So, whilst the letter is very important, I don't think it's 110% important.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Warwick. And now over to past Governor Alma with a question.
Thanks, Kira. And thank you, Greg. You've done a wonderful job of presenting the membership program that we're using in District 9810. I just wanted to really accentuate the points that you made earlier about clubs needing to be ready to do this. And we have in the district a 5-point plan. And the first point is about clubs thinking about changes they need to make in order to be exciting and the sort of club that people really want to join. So that's point one, and we do some processes working through that. Point two is making a plan to implement those changes. So making a proper plan in the club to implement changes and then starting to implement them. And it's not until that process has been done that we like to unleash Greg onto clubs and let him show them exactly how to go about recruiting members. We don't want to have 10 new members join a club this year only to resign next year. And what we find in step one is clubs recognise that people join Rotary for community service and for fellowship, friendship and networking. And after we finish session one, they then realise that what they actually offer people is fundraisers and meetings. So there's a big divide between what people want and what we give. I won't talk anymore. I could go on for ages, but it's really important that step three is step three, not step one.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Thank you for that, Alma. Greg, did you want to say anything at this stage? Any comment on that?
Oh, no, I agree emphatically with Alma. We've had no names, no pack drills, but we've had a number of run-ins with clubs that want me to come along and basically do what I've done tonight with you guys. So consider yourself privileged. we've had to say no. And we now have a number of clubs who are going through steps 1 and 2 and now understand the importance of getting your club ready before you bring these 10 new members in.
The brutal reality of it is if a club doesn't do what we call, well, part of the modernisation process, we had an outstanding example of where we used the Ford model, which is another way of a similar model to yours, and a club picked up 8 members and lost them all in an excruciating 9-month period, which left them feeling pretty miserable about themselves with no net benefit from it. So, yeah, that's really important. Now, Governor Pat has another question. Over to you, please, Pat.
It's not too hard one, sorry, and it's probably an obvious answer, but you did talk about businesses that have supported your club. Do you also contact organisations that your club have supported, so not-for-profits or?
Yes, we do. I tend to concentrate on the presentation that we've just gone through. I'm chair of the membership committee, and I've delegated that role that you just mentioned, contacting other companies, etc., to somebody else, and it does work. It does work.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Thank you, Greg. District Governor nominee Lisa from District 9640 has a question.
Thanks, Caro. I'm actually in Melbourne at the moment, so I think I'm probably a little bit closer to you, down here for work. I've got a question, and I'm thinking about this as well because I'm the incoming membership chair for district. I look after extensions, so a lot of the new style clubs and satellite clubs. So I think there's a few tips in there I'd probably take out for that. But when you do get to the point of talking about membership fees, I'm kind of curious, and it's a question I ask a lot. Do you use the word cost, or do you talk about the words investment, benefit? What's the language that you use when you talk about fees?
Good question, and I can see the distinction. I think I say what I'm trying to recall a conversation. I think I phrased it along the lines that there is an annual fee of $320 that can be paid half yearly. Investment, it's a good term. I may start to use that if I can steal that off you.
Yeah, look, the reason I raise it, and it's particularly because some of the 20 and 30-year-olds coming in, with the amount of training that is online and for RI and the mentorship of the older Rotarians to the younger, it's rather than going off and buying mentorship more broadly, we can actually offer it through our Rotary clubs across districts, clubs, etc. So I guess that's where that language of investment comes from, and I'm finding it's resonating because I'm about to, next week I've got another EOI event to take a club where they've got membership of 70 years plus, and we're about to launch their satellite club of 20 and 30-year-olds. And they're looking for mentorship, and they're looking for business guidance, and they're looking for sort of that professional development. So I guess that's where, my business brain has gone, is it an ROI conversation or is it a cost conversation in terms of changing the dial, in terms of that benefit that people get?
Yeah, I guess using that word investment instead of cost leads you into another conversation, which is a good thing to have, in that it leads to a situation where when you say, so what do you mean investment? I said, well, yeah, there's so much that Rotary can give you that it's the $300 odd is an actually investment for you, because you can gain this and this and this and this and this, etc. So yeah, it's a good point.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Greg. Okay, now Assistant Governor Cat has a question for us from District 9455. Over to you, please, Cat.
Thanks very much for your presentation, Greg, and good on you for your success. It's quite stunning, so fantastic. My question is, what time of year do you recruit? Is it towards the end of the financial year because fees are yearly? Do you do pro rata fees when people join? Or, have you got a sort of calendar, or is it a year-round thing that you do? And also my second point is not a question, it's a statement. And it says that, there's a lot of marketing talk, and this is where I'm very much from a sales background. I've been in sales for about 30 years. There's a big difference between marketing and sales. And I get Warwick's point. If it's not a sales letter, then it's not going to hit the mark. So what do you do about that? And what is the emphasis on selling Rotary rather than marketing Rotary?
I can pick up your first point. I was a financial planner for 30 years and in management for the bulk of that. And when I was training new people, the question was always asked, what's the best day to ring people and talk to them? And I would say, well, Fridays are no good because all people are thinking about is what they're going to be doing on the weekend. Saturday, well, we've got kids' sports and so forth, and they, the chances of them being able to give you enough time is remote. Sunday, well, Sundays, there's still a lot of people who practice religion, etc. So that's probably not appropriate. Monday, well, people are just back at work, but they can't stop thinking about what they were doing on the weekend. Tuesday, well, they didn't do much on Monday, so they're flat out catching up on what they didn't do. Wednesday, they're too exhausted because they've just spent working, flat out on Tuesday. And Thursday, of course, is payday, and that's they're too busy working out whether they can pay the mortgage, etc. And that takes you back to Friday. So there's never ever a really good time to ring somebody. So I don't think you can actually pick a time, whether it's of the days or years or the months or whatever. I run this thing every month, so all the way through. Picking up your point on the difference between sales and marketing, this is, I'd refer to it as a sales exercise. It is probably more of a marketing exercise than anything else. And the difference between selling and marketing is that selling is, you've got one ambition, and that is to get that sale. Marketing is far more sophisticated, and it's designed to inform people and lead them into saying, yes, I want to buy that product. I hope that answers your question.
It does, thanks.
Thanks, Kat, and thanks, Greg. Greg, I have a couple of questions. The first is, how important is it when you have a new member that's coming, or a new person who's considering membership, how important is it to run a significant project so they get to work with other club members rather than sitting around eating and talking to them?
Yeah. Vitally important. Particularly if I'm talking to somebody and they say, well, what sort of things do Rotary do? And I say, oh, well, we've got all these community programs we're doing, etc. And then we come into the meeting and they're basically going to say, well, when can I start doing something? It's important that they're engaged as quickly as possible, even if it's something as petty as cooking a sausage at the Bunnings barbecue. At least they're doing something and involved. But get them onto a committee, get them onto a project as quickly as you possibly can.
Super. Thanks, Greg. And following up from that, we've had a concept that's been in use around the place for a while. I haven't heard much talk about it recently, but it's a club within a club where you take on a group of new recruits in roughly the same time frame, and they actually get to experience the club together, and so they have an affinity, being you, Do you find that it's handy to have a group of new recruits, or that there are downsides to that? What's your perspective there?
Yeah, I touched on it a little bit before when I talked about the mentoring program. If you have a group of existing members, call it 5 or 6, whose dedicated role is to mentor the new members, and they can do it in a group environment. So if there's a registering with the education services of RI, etc., you can sit 4 or 5 people together and take them through that process. Have a look at the educational programs that are available. Yeah, it's a good idea.
We have a future program coming up on the from Macquarie Sunrise, who use the STAR program, which has been a big winner in terms of induction. But that's one for another day. Greg, this is where I put you on the spot. And it's probably my favourite question, because it gets some really fantastic answers. Greg Mossop, why are you in Rotary?
Yeah, thanks for that, Kira. It's good. I joined Rotary because I was conned. That's the easiest way to describe it. My wife, we're both retired now, but my wife used to work with a gentleman, a solicitor. She was doing conveyancing by the name of Neville Windybank. And Neville is a wonderful guy. Can't play cards very well, but he's not a bad bloke. And he has poor eyesight. And one evening he said, you should come along to Rotary and be my driver. And I said, oh, yeah. No, I said, I'm serious. So that's how I first came to go to a Rotary meeting. I was literally being a driver for Neville to get him there, because he couldn't drive at night. And I fell in love with the place. I really did. Why am I in Rotary? Because I want to be involved in an organisation that does things. I want to be involved in an organisation that has got rid of polio off the face of the globe. I want to be involved in an organisation that is now turning its head to malaria. I want to be involved in an organisation that helps communities, that helps the homeless, helps the kids, etc., etc.
Fantastic. Loved it, Greg. Now, at this point, I'm sure that everyone has appreciated judging by the near continuous stream of questions. Greg, well done, Greg. Yay. Great work, mate. And on that note, thank you again, Greg, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. It's been great having you with us.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, Caro.
Well done.
Good night, everyone.
Night.
Good night.
Good night.
Thank you for joining us.